When we tackle complex problems, our first instinct is usually to gather around a table. We share notes, we learn side by side, and we figure things out as a community. But when organizations try to implement generative AI, they often abandon that shared approach. According to an MIT 2025 study, roughly 95% of enterprise generative AI pilots deliver no measurable financial return. The surprising part is that this almost never happens because the technology falls short. By this stage, the tools work perfectly, the methods are sound, and the evidence is clear. The real issue is that successful programs inevitably hit a wall. They fail because they are built as temporary structures, surviving on annual initiative budgets and staffed by employees borrowed from their actual day jobs. The AI program becomes a precarious scaffold holding up massive expectations. It relies entirely on the sheer willpower of individuals holding the pieces together. Then the irony of corporate success kicks in. The individual holding it all together does such an excellent job that they get promoted. The second they step away, the scaffold comes down. To survive, an organization must stop building temporary programs and start building a permanent operating model. It is the only way to ensure that what one person figures out, the entire enterprise actually gets to keep. Making that shift requires converting 4 temporary projects into 4 permanent standing functions. Counterintuitively, you have to start by building rules and measurement. Take value tracking. In a temporary program, this is just a single business case, written to get executive approval and then quickly forgotten once the work begins. In a permanent function, it becomes a rigorous quarterly scorecard. An independent financial analyst owns the numbers, preserving baselines and repeatedly proving that scaled systems actually continue to work. The same goes for governance. Instead of an ad hoc committee that only meets when someone remembers to ask them, a permanent function automatically flags and reviews every single AI use case before it deploys. The urgency here is real. Strict regulatory deadlines, like the obligations in the EU AI Act, are arriving on fixed dates. They do not care if your internal AI program is currently between executive sponsors. Establishing these 2 functions first costs very little budget. Instantly, your entire AI estate becomes visible, and your results become legally and financially provable. By tackling measurement and rules right out of the gate, you replace enthusiastic arguments with hard data. That defensible scorecard is exactly what you need to fund the rest of the transformation. Which brings us to the third capability, delivery. This is the ultimate binding constraint on how much AI your enterprise can actually absorb and implement. A temporary pilot relies on a team formed out of goodwill and borrowed time. A permanent pod, however, is a dedicated, cross-functional crew that moves from one workflow to the next with all their expertise intact. Treating the role of transformer as a funded, permanent career path with real headcount is the single most effective action you can take to increase your organization's AI capacity. This matrix tracks converting a capability into a standing function using 5 moves: a permanent owner, base budget, documented method, calendar cadence, and defined interfaces. Without explicit handoffs between them, like delivery sending value data to value tracking, the system quietly reverts to depending on fleeting attention. The final capability is discovery, which is how you intake new ideas. The most common mistake organizations make is opening this door entirely too early. If you open a standing intake before you have the delivery capacity to execute those ideas, you only manufacture a massive backlog and destroy organizational trust in the process. True scale happens when you patiently wait for delivery capacity to exist. Once it does, demand flows in naturally, without executives needing to constantly ask for it. Consider a mid-sized manufacturer that ran a highly successful AI program for 2 years. They hit every metric, deployed 11 use cases, and built a perfectly trained team. Their success was a trap. The director was promoted, and within 4 quarters, the meeting stopped. Scaled workflows quietly decayed back into manual processes, and the talented team dispersed. The technology didn't fail. The artifacts were still perfectly documented on their internet. The only thing that failed was permanence. A program is an individual person's achievement. An operating model is an organization's shared property. Building that shared property is the final, hardest task of an AI initiative. It is the only structure strong enough to survive a promotion or a chaotic quarter. By transitioning from individual heroics to an operating model, you guarantee that the future of work isn't a solitary struggle. It becomes a permanent community, a place where the tools belong to everyone, and there is always room at the table.